Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and behold the mighty powers of Nit. So, yeah man, I got no ideas. Here we see Nit in the Frying Pan Mark 35, yet another high tier, it's high tier to me, Soviet medium tank. I can't remember the name of this thing. T-55? I'm sure you guys know. Corrections, please, in the comments down below. But what I do remember about this tank is it has the really cool shell ejection animation that we have seen in the past. And speaking of things we've seen before, Nit I gotta figure out a better way to say his name. He starts out well for a high tier match by setting himself up in a sniping position where he can use his powerful APDS darts with their good armor penetration qualities and their very high muzzle velocity to snipe enemies from long range, and there are targets available. Was that a bit high on that shot against? I'm not sure what that was. Everything's teeny to me on this screen. Toshio, why are you even commenting if you can't see? Well, maybe this is commentary for the blind. Anyway, here we go. I resized my little view screen a little bit so I can tell that he's shooting at two tanks now. And taking a hit to the turret, he's going to need to rethink his life decisions. Now, I have this general rule whenever I'm playing War Thunder, and it's not something I can always abide by, as rule of thumbs tend to be, they've done a little bit of work on the smoke mechanics. I like that. But this general rule is never engage more than one enemy at a time if you don't have to. So Nit poked out there against two enemy tanks, and one of them had a good scope on where he was going to be, even though it's a difficult shot hitting the low profile of this Soviet saucepan. He was able to get his round on target. So maybe what you could call a tactical error or a bold decision. Either way, you do have to have a little bit of cojones to make things happen in high tier, and Nit, being continually targeted by at least two enemies here, is definitely playing boldly, only exposing as much of his tank as he needs to so that the low profile of this Soviet medium and the large profile of the rocks protecting him can have the maximum effect. Taking a second shot into the turret, this time taking down the gunner once again and the turret ring, Nit is going to need to sit and repair for a while. Not the best start to a match, but he's not dead, so it could be worse. Moving on into this one, he's going to need to spend some time to repair, and again, maybe rethink your strategy. If there's multiple enemies that are aware of your position, it might not be the best idea to poke out and hope for the best, especially at high tier where most of the guns are essentially point and click with their very high muzzle velocities and their low flight trajectory. It's a lot more unforgiving to try and take on more than you can handle. However, with the stabilizer and a little bit of repositioning, he's able to get a shot on what looks like an M103, so that's a 7.7 heavy tank. Not the most powerful vehicle at 7.7 anymore, often outshone by the tanks it can face in an up tier, as you see here, as this powerful medium tank that Nit is driving can outclass the American low profile heavy tank with its 120mm cannon and its dummy thick turret that doesn't really matter all that much, especially if you're side on to the Soviet 125. Anyway, another hit to the turret. Surprising that Nit survives this one, as he only has one crew in the hull, And, excuse me, it's early in the morning. His driver gets redded there, most of the post-penetration damage being absorbed by his cannon breach. Once again, he's going to have a sit, he's going to have a think, and maybe consider what to do at this point. He's in a sticky situation because he has cover behind these rocks, and yet, once again, enemies with their own cover know where he is. This is a bad situation. We're in a tight spot. Anyway, we thought you was a toad. Moving on. Nit cannot afford to take another hit here as he pushes forward and finds another position to fire from. Definitely a good idea, as he has been spotted by enemies, so it's a good strategy to find a new firing position, as we saw him do recently, so that he can try and take advantage of the mobility and the powerful gun on this vehicle. Now, if this wasn't high tier, he'd have a lot easier time, as players tend to play much more aggressively. You can see that his team has actually filtered into the I would call it the urban area, but the construction zone, the industrial area, as it were, the oil reserves, yes. But himself unable to get a good shot on an enemy at this point. That is going to change, and this is something of a slow, something of a disappointing start to the match, and that's a good reminder that in the game of War Thunder, things can turn at any moment. You could be having just a very unsatisfying, difficult match, and then something like a Magok just shows up and gives you a good shot on him to give you your first kill, and yet M103 backing him up with a heat round takes him down. Now, Nit back once again in a backup vehicle. He was probably trying to speed this tank, I assume, or maybe it's the only vehicle he has at this rank. In any event, he was playing fairly well, a little bit more aggressively than I would have in that situation where you're acting as a sniper, and yet, as I mentioned, you have to play a little bit more aggressively than you want to if you're going to make a difference in a match. So it was a tough balancing act. He ended up facing more than he could handle. You really don't stand much of a chance if you have a fully loaded M103 staring down you just after you blapped his teammate. So there wasn't really anything he could do there. Wally makes his appearance, firing guided missiles over that ridge. His hull is completely protected, and that is something that we've noticed quite a bit about the Squadron Research vehicle that's available in the American Ground Forces tree as a top tier reward for the new Squadron Research system. And Nit now attempting to get shots on the launcher to at least slow down this American troll of an ATGM vehicle. Not the only ATGM launcher that can fire from behind cover, so not expecting to see any serious changes to it in the near future, and yet by far the most versatile, as it has an incredible amount of firing platform elevation over the main hull and look down capability with its incredible view range and depression. Speaking of depression, this poor M103 driver is completely boned. Even though that second round did not penetrate the engine compartment, I think it landed itself in the transmission and still set fire, because transmissions can be set on fire, which I think is kind of stupid. Maybe a little fire can start cooking in a transmission, but enough to burn down a tank, I wouldn't think it's even significant. But that's been a thing that's been going on in War Thunder for a very, very long time. Way back in the day, they played with the likelihood of transmissions setting on fire, stating that, well, a transmission fire wouldn't really happen all the time in this given situation, yada blah blah. And yet, transmission fires are still a thing in War Thunder, as are, what would it be called? Fuel supply detonations, fuel tank detonations that count in the game as an ammo rack, wiping out your entire crew. Interesting that sometimes a fuel tank will not be set on fire, sometimes a fuel tank will be set on fire. As we take another shot at Wally, who has repaired his launcher, that vehicle is very difficult to take down when it's dug into a defensive position. So, yeah, the fires system, the ammo rack system in War Thunder, it almost feels a little bit like RNG now, doesn't it? And so that's one of the reasons that I like to go for crew and cannon breaches / cannon. What's your deal, Leopard? Is this your spot? Is this your firing position? Do you own this part of the battlefield? Excuse me, sir. You're standing in my firing position. You're blocking my shot. I can slap over you. I need gun depression. Anyway, a nice shot on an STB that's pushing forward. Was that an STB? I can't tell. It's one of those 7.7 battle rating Japanese medium tanks. It's quite good. It could have been the something Kai premium variant. They look very similar. It's hard to tell from that angle. But they are a very reliable medium tank at the higher tiers, and yet they can often face enemies that will outshine them. Even so, in the meta of War Thunder, especially at high tier, they can do okay. Another shot now on that American medium tank with the slopey armor. I think it's called the T90 what? T92? Something along those lines. And if you listen, the audio in War Thunder is a bit strange. Those rockets exploding near him, no sound. The jet flying overhead, blasting in our ears. All of this to say that the audio system in War Thunder has been recently updated, and it could use some more updates. In any event, now Nit starting to reap the harvest in terms of rewards here as enemies realize they need to push forward and take the zone. The match is starting to wind down, and Nit takes a shot from I know not where. Perhaps a long-range enemy, a lawn dart thrower who's still active from his position of cover. In any event, someone that has eyes on the A point, so not a bad place to be, probably flanking somewhere in those rocks. And surprisingly, Nit does not take another shot into his tank to finish him off. I thought for sure he'd be done here, and yet with one crew down and a big old cannon breach taken out, it's not too long of a repair even as he captures the A point, securing it for his team, setting off his ESS to cover himself to the best of his ability, especially from enemy aircraft. Merkava, not quite fast enough on the trigger there. Not sure why. He must have been looking at the wrong place, because the stabilizer and the good stability of the Merkava should have been enough to give him a shot at Nit. His AP round should have been strong enough to take him down as well, and yet Nit was the one who emerged victorious from that encounter. A single shot into the driver area of the Merkava, taking down all the crew in that otherwise very survivable vehicle. Well, very survivable for a medium tank at this battle rating, which is to say, you have about a 50% chance of getting one shot by everything you face. Welcome to high tier. The water's fine. I never play here. You can probably tell that from the commentary that I've been giving, calling things that one and this and that one over there. Yes, I know. Quality material. Was that a T-32? That looks like a BR 7 point something American tank from the hit indicator. I hazard to say that was a T-32, which now sits, if you're looking at the E1, at a 7.7 battle rating, putting it as just a worse version of the M103 at the same battle rating with a much higher repair cost. Not something I would recommend by any means, as the cannon on the American T-32 is trash at this battle rating. Even the medium tanks can laugh at your AP round. Finding an M41 of all things, American light tank battle rating 6.0 here in this, well, it's at least a 7-7 match. I think it's more like an 8.3 if I'm not mistaken, and easily taking down a couple of the turret crew, including the gunner. Now he's ready to move in for his next shot, but a couple of allies show up, at least allies of the M41, and yet they just push right on. Nit bouncing his shot from, again, let's say it together, I know not where, somewhere off in the rocks, I suppose, and yet able to absorb the shot. Surprisingly, his side armor was not targeted by whoever that was, which would have been probably much more effective at the angle that Nit was to the incoming fire, but we won't hazard too much of a guess, as Nit has found his next target. Really? A T-92, plunk, as the shell gets ejected out the back of the turret. Another 6-7, this time American light tank. What is the deal with you American players and not having a lineup at your battle rating? Anyway, maybe it's not the worst decision, but that M60 that had us in their sights earlier now takes us down, and the match winds to a close. A victory for Nit's team on points alone, and a nice replay that he sent in to us. Looking forward to more. And I think, was he in the Chinese version of that medium tank? I'm not quite sure. I don't know enough about these things. Sorry that I couldn't give you better commentary in this one, but I don't play a lot of high tier, and I am looking forward to you telling me what I was looking at in the comments below. Catch you guys in the next one. Send in those replays. Bye-bye.